Hey, welcome to part 3. Just to conclude our quick map of philosophy. So, in ontology and metaphysics, we claim to know the world. We make claims about what the world is. When you make a claim about what something is, like there is a God or there isn't a God, or I have a soul or I don't have a soul, we're making claims about ontology. When you do epistemology, you are making a claim about what we know. So scientific claims are made in language. Knowing about other things like the nature of art, all of these claims are made in language. And axiology, not to be left out, though it will be de-emphasized. We make peace, we develop economies, we define rights and responsibilities. All of this happens in language. So, what could go wrong? Oh yeah, welcome to the class, man. Everything can go wrong. So, here's one big question just to keep in the back of your mind right now. What if language genuinely and fundamentally misleads us about reality? So here are some kind of classic questions, right? Wittgenstein came up with this idea. We will study him in depth, but I just want to use this as an example on introductory day so that you get the idea. So we ask questions like, where is the library? And then there are questions that have the same form, like, where is my soul? But we know how to answer the question, where is the library, right? You get out a map of the campus and you point to it, or you can walk the person there if they're lost, right? You can give them directions north, south, east, west of wherever you are. You can tell them to use a compass, right? There are ways to answer where is the library. We have no clear and established way to answer the question, where is my soul? In fact, it may be a poorly formed question, because if your soul is not a material object, right, if it's spiritual or immaterial, so it's not made up of matter, it's not made up of atoms, it's not made up of anything that takes up physical space, then we probably shouldn't be asking the question, where is my soul? Because it's badly formed. The soul doesn't take up space. There's no location for it. And we have no method for figuring out where the soul might be. So they look the same on the surface, where is the library and where is my soul? But they are not the same semantically. So Wittgenstein suggests that we might get caught up in the structure of language and think the soul is exactly the same as like the library. And if we do that, then we could go on this weird metaphysical journey that may waste a whole bunch of time, is what he suggests in some places. Likewise, I can ask you if there's Ethiopian food in Bozeman, right? Is there Ethiopian food in Bozeman, and does it exist? That maps onto the question, is there a God, right? Is there an X? So we know how to figure out whether or not there's Ethiopian food in Bozeman, right? You can go on the web, you can drive around town, you can ask people, right? You can go on a restaurant exploration tour, but we have no method for really figuring out if there is a God. We do make arguments for and against God, but it's certainly not as clearly or as well defined how we're going to make this kind of determination. This is why people often say that the answer to this question is, well, it's a matter of faith. Notice that that answer doesn't transfer back onto, is there Ethiopian food in Bozeman? It's not a matter of faith, right? You can't just believe really hard that there's Ethiopian food in Bozeman and then there will be, right? There's just not, these sentences look like they're exactly the same structurally. Syntactically, there's another fancy word for the day, right? The syntax is the same in these sentences. Where is the X? Is there an X, right? Very simple syntactic questions, and yet the methods for answering them are so profoundly and radically different that we may be being misled by our language into thinking that they're similar when they're not. The big bombshell of this, I think, is Descartes' cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am. This is taken by many to be quite incontrovertible, or at least a very powerful argument that if we know anything at all, what we do know is that we exist, or at least I know that I exist, barring solipsism. Ask me if you don't know what solipsism is. So I think therefore I am. Wow, man, great proof. Because it seems like in order to think I must exist first, and that sometimes I exist and I'm not thinking, but sometimes I exist and I am thinking. So it seems like existence is a prerequisite for thinking, but this is just the structure of our language, right? Our language has words in it, and part of the meaning of the word thinking is existing, right? You have to exist in order to think, but maybe this structure of our language doesn't really map onto the real conceiving independent world. Maybe thought does not demand existence. Now, I can't explain to you exactly how that would work, but what I'm trying to do is shake apart our notions of how language works and the structure of sentences and what reality might be like. So those are just some quick examples to show that language might profoundly mislead us about reality. And at the bottom, I have another question that is related. It's not the same question, but I see this a lot. People seem to think that truth is somewhere in the middle between the two extreme views that are being offered, right? So if you get an extreme if you get an extreme view posited by the communists and then an extreme view posited by the capitalists, many people will take that framing, communism versus capitalism, and they'll try to work toward a compromised position. And it seems like there's some sort of predisposition for believing that the truth is somewhere in the middle between the two extreme views. But why should we believe that? Do two extreme views always map the boundaries of reality? And why do we think that the best or the most robust form of reality is in the middle of the extreme views? So maybe we're being misled culturally and linguistically by our understanding of words that we take to be good in that they're important in our culture. So we have words like tolerance and compromise and respect. And I think that sometimes we internalize these values that I think are important values, right? That we want to tolerate views different from our own, that we do want to reach compromises, and that we want to be respectful of other people's views. These are great principles. I like them generally, but tolerance does not mean necessarily that we tolerate the intolerant, right? So there are questions at the boundary of this that concern us. Should we always reach a compromise? So should we compromise with terrorists? Maybe we shouldn't compromise with terrorists. And does being respectful mean that everyone's truth is exactly the same, or does it represent exactly the same amount of reality? Do we have to always meet in the middle? Maybe that's not the right way to go to get to the truth. So this question on the bottom here is kind of a question of framing and the way that we tend to think about things culturally, and it's connected to the way that we use words. So here's my example for the day. It's Rick and Morty Season 2, Episode 2. You can hit it on the hot link here. The title of the episode is Morty Night Run, and I really only need you to watch minute 2:30 to 4:22. Of course, you can watch the whole episode, but I only care about this 2-minute span right now. And by the way, before you click on the link, I have a disclaimer in the syllabus, which will be up later today. And I want to feature this disclaimer is that, yes, I often use examples from popular culture, and we often talk about things that might be racy or that might be disturbing. We could talk about war. We could talk about rape. We could talk about transgender questions. We could talk about pornography. We could talk about lots of things that might disturb you. So I do have a disclaimer clause. You could be offended, and if you don't like vulgar language, you are not going to like Rick and Morty. So you might get freaked out. The requirement is just come and talk to me about it if you are freaked out. I don't mean to freak people out. I just think that some of these things cannot be avoided, and we need to talk about it in this class. Come and talk with me about it if you are upset, and we'll try to come to an answer. I don't pick these examples frivolously, even though they are often vulgar or a little bit crazy. I pick them because I think that they're really important examples. So you've watched the Rick and Morty, and I just want to ask you, well, what just happened? You get this frame that is very, very interesting. Rick sells the assassin a weapon. The assassin explains that he will kill anyone because he loves to kill. He has no code of ethics, or perhaps his only code of ethics is that it's super, super fun for him to kill, so he's a hedonist. Rick also explains that the only reason why he sold the weapon is that he really wants to play video games or some interdimensional version of video games for an afternoon. So it also seems like Rick posits as the highest good, some hedonistic notion of, this is fun for me and I don't care if anybody gets killed. And so what an interesting framing situation you have here, right? Is it the case that it's fine to kill anyone because you love to kill them, and is it fine to assist that killing because you want the money to play video games? It's a very interesting frame, and you see Morty being very distressed throughout because Morty has a very planetary mindset. And I wanted to point out, remember to practice your fallacies. I said we'd go over logic, we will go over logic. So Rick uses all of these great fallacies. So he says Wall Street is also shady, which is 2 Morty has a very planetary mindset, which could be construed as an appeal to emotion or an appeal to the crowd or an ad hominem. I could even imagine that it is a false dichotomy. If these fallacies are coming at you fast and furious and you don't remember them, now is your time to review, and I will post a fallacy sheet online. Rick also kind of makes this fatalistic existentialist argument. The assassin would kill whether or not Rick is involved, so Rick might as well make the money. So he's got all these wild arguments in there that I think are worth exploring and thinking about how good the reasoning is. But what I really want to focus on is, hey, if you spend all day shuffling words around, you can make anything sound bad. Really? Stay tuned. Here comes part 4.